Welcome to this edition of Stepping Stones, My Story. I'm your host, Ms. Deidre Lewis. I love coming to the studio to bring a message in hopes that it will change someone else's life that's viewing our show. So I'm happy to introduce our first guest, Joseph Ray. How are you doing today, Joseph?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm happy to have you to share your story.
Yes.
Because like I said, whenever I bring someone into the studio, it's in hopes to change someone else's life, and that someone else will be motivated and inspired by my guest story. So that's why I just want to go ahead and jump right in there, and for you to tell your story, all of you've been through that's led up to the success that you are experiencing right now. And I want to touch base on your early childhood, you know, what it was like for Joseph Ray coming up. You know, what was your past like that brought you to this point that you're at right now in your life?
Right. So I was birthed into a situation of what I have come to know as dysfunctionalism.
Right.
Meaning that my parents never married. My mother was a young mother. She had me at 17. 2 weeks later, she turned 18.
Wow.
And my dad was always a hard worker. So early on, I kind of got a first glimpse of what it would be like if my parents were married. But it wasn't until later on that I actually discovered that they never did marry. The good thing is my dad was a provider. He was a hard worker. Early on, he made up his mind what he wanted to do, with his life, and that was get a job and go to work. So now my mom, on the other hand, she had external influences on her that essentially broke their relationship up. And I'm not blaming everything on mom, because I know it's two sides to every story. But
exactly.
Being older now and knowing how a relationship works, most of it was directed toward mom. And so dad took on the responsibility of making sure, that he raised us the right way and that we had everything we needed.
And that's what a lot of our youth are facing, broken households. But sometimes, even though there's one parent or two parents in the house, sometimes we just feel like this overwhelming of pressure, because I grew up in a single parent household, and I know that sometimes I got, a little sad because I wanted my mother and father both there, but, things tend to happen. But I don't think that we have to use that as a stepping stone, like something to hold you back. It's just like you just keep on moving forward, despite of what you've been through. And you did that,
Exactly. Exactly.
You moved forward despite of having a broken household. And so what happened after that? Like, what was it like after mom and dad had to split up?
After mom and dad had to split, things as I knew it, changed. For example, my dad's goal was to get us out of the environment that we were currently in, which was, low income area, high crime rates. And so later on, dad moved us out to Hutchins, to Wilma Hutchins. We moved into our first home. Meanwhile, mom was still bouncing from house to house and project to project. So every other weekend, dad made sure that we spent time with mom. And so we would go over there with mom and we hang out. And that's more so of where I got my exposure of the rough side of life.
Right.
Because being with dad, he protected us from so many different elements that were out there, but mom exposed us to them in a sense, which in essence gave me a balance. So I knew growing up as a kid what it was like to live in the suburbs, but also knew what it was like to be in the projects, to be with kids that didn't have what I have, or that were even less fortunate than I was. Mom was an alcoholic. She battled with that for many years. And oftentimes it took a toll on our relationship because I didn't feel like we could relate to her.
Right.
Her personality was, she was sweet lady, quiet to herself. She just became a different person, when she started to drinking. So with knowing that alone barred me from ever wanting to drink, So I grew up with the mindset of, I don't ever want to drink,
really?
I don't ever want to smoke or do drugs. And to this day, I hadn't done either or.
Sometimes that will happen. You face these things as a child, and it'll affect you as until your adults, and not in a negative way, but in a good way. When I was coming up, we lived in the projects at one point, and I would see guys that done smoke some type of drug, and they just be outraged and screaming and talking to themselves. And I've witnessed crackheads going into somebody's home and breaking in and coming out, and I said, I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for my children, just witnessing that head on first, so I can understand what you're saying when to grow up to see someone what alcoholism is that what they call
Yeah,
it can do to you.
Right.
You know, I don't want no parts of that.
Right.
So at one point, I know at one point, like, you know, your dad was the full provider for the home.
Yeah.
He took care of everything. He took care of, because you have other brothers and sisters,
Right,
you know,
right.
that came up. You're the oldest.
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Right, I'm the oldest.
So at one point, you started to live with your uncle and aunt, you
Right.
know, and you said you got exposed to a few things then.
Yeah, so my sophomore year in high school, as I say, we were living in Wilma Hutchins at the time, and I knew that I didn't want to go to Hutch High School,
Yeah.
Wilma Hutchins High School.
I was supposed to go there too.
Yeah, so I moved. You know, I talked to Dad, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, we moved out to Dallas. I moved to Dallas, back to Pleasant Grove, which is where I'm originally from.
Right.
With my aunt, which is my dad's sister.
Mm-hmm.
So my freshman year at Skyline, I was living with my aunt.
Okay.
But it was my sophomore year that the transition came when I moved in with my uncle, which is my mother's brother.
Oh, okay.
Now,
okay.
my uncle, he was well noted for living a fast life. He was involved in some activities that he shouldn't have been involved in.
Right.
And he was already a two-time loser,
Mhm.
which means he had been in trouble twice already.
Wow.
But I didn't look at my uncle as a person that was a troublemaker, because he wasn't that type of guy. I just looked at him as a person that was, you know, trying to make a living.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's an African-American man. He has strikes against him, you know, and so in his mind, what else am I supposed to do? You know, certain places he couldn't live, certain jobs he couldn't work. So he took matters into his own hand. And I think for the first time, I got a chance to see how the actual drug market works,
Wow.
you know, through my uncle, you know,
Right.
and watching his interactions and how he dealt with people and stuff. And I mean, on all levels, you know.
Right.
And so, even though the money was good, you know, he was able to buy what he wanted and, you know, do the things he wanted to do. I knew in my heart that was a risk I didn't want to take,
Right.
you know.
right.
So later on, he married my aunt at the time, but she was into a different life. You know, she was into white collar crime,
White-collar
which
crimes.
is credit cards, checks, and things of that nature. Now, mind you, I'm still talking with Dad, and you know, I'm letting him know, you know, kind of what's going on or whatever.
Right.
But I'm keeping some things from him because I knew how he was.
Yeah.
So we fast forward to my senior year. I'm feeling myself, you know. I'm doing great in school.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to college. But a change happened, you know, a major change happened.
And that's with your father.
Major change happened with my dad. My dad was going through a custody situation with one of my brothers, and things just kind of got out of hand, and my dad wound up going to jail. So my dad wound up getting 12 years in prison, and I never forget the day.
12 years.
12 years.
12
Yeah,
years.
12 years. And so we're talking about a man who's never been in trouble. You know, a man who doesn't have a history of being in trouble, a man who's never smoked or drank or done drugs himself.
Right.
You know, a model citizen, you know. And so,
But I have a quick question.
Mhm.
Okay, so in your mind, right, seeing your father as this, because sometimes we always say, okay, single mothers.
Right, right.
We don't really talk about the single fathers as much.
Right, exactly.
And your dad was a single father that raised you guys, worked hard-working man, you know, didn't get in any trouble. What does that make you feel like? You know, how does that make you feel like my dad doesn't do bad stuff? He's
Right.
not out there selling drugs. He's not out there robbing. He's a hard-working man that breaks his back to make sure that me and my brothers and sisters are taken care of. And here he is, slammed with 12 years in prison. What did that do to your faith?
man, it literally shook the very foundation of my faith, because, you know, we come up in church, you know, we was in church sun up to sundown. And we was always taught to, you know, depend on God, you know, as a
Right.
kid. But I don't think you really understand what it means to depend on God until you really have to depend on God.
Amen.
You know, and so in that situation, it was a shock to me. I knew he was going back and forth to court for over a year and paying these attorneys. But in my mind, my dad's never been in trouble. You know, at the most, he'll get a probation or something.
Right.
That actually didn't happen. So, and I think it hit home with me first, because I had just turned 18 the
Just
summer of
18.
July. Turned 18.
Stepping into manhood.
Right, stepping into
when you
manhood.
need your father the most.
The most. And I never forget, my uncle pulled up, which was my dad's brother. He had went to court with my dad that morning. And I never forget, I seen my dad going out, and he said, I'll be back, you know. And I remember going to the front door, and I heard the car pull up, and I looked out, I didn't see my dad, I saw my uncle. And I asked my uncle, I said, where's Dad? You know, where's my daddy? And he looked, and he kind of paused for a second, and then he dropped his head and shook his head. He said, man, they gave your dad 12 years.
Your heart dropped? Did your heart drop?
The feeling that you get, it's almost unexplainable. For somebody to tell you the person that you depend on and that you look to and that you love the most has been suddenly taken away from you, and it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do or say that'll bring that person back to that moment.
Right.
You can't explain the feeling. You know, it's almost a sense of numbness, like I'm dreaming. He didn't just say that, you know.
Right.
And then you go through your period of shock, you know, and from that period you go through your period of mourning. It was at that point that I became angry.
You know, and I think that we talked about that before, like pretty much leading up to, you know, you having jail time, it was like pretty much angry. Cause I know you said you did what you did to support, but in the back of your mind, was you feeling, okay, you know what, I'm angry because this didn't happen to my dad. I do have to support, but, you know, at this point, whatever means necessary, you know, whatever I got to do to survive, I'm about to do it.
Exactly, and that's what essentially led me down the road that I took. You know, as we were discussing earlier, I wound up getting in trouble myself. You know, based on the forgery. You know, forgery of some checks. And the thing I was telling you earlier is, I wasn't out in the streets, you know, hustling in a sense to, you know, show off to somebody or to buy the next big chain or new clothes. In my mind, I felt like I was hustling out of a means of necessity, because now Dad's gone. My dad had married again. My stepmother, which she was very, very supportive and a big piece of my childhood. But they wound up separating. They wound up divorcing. And so we're back to being with just grandma. You know, grandma's on a fixed income, all these kids to take care of. And so things were just bad for me. My grandmother would always tell me, baby, you need to lean on God. God would always make a way for us.
Exactly. She sounded like my grandma.
But in my mind, I'm saying, are you talking about the same God that allowed the person that I lean on the most to be taken away from me? Well, that ain't the God that I want to be bothered with anymore.
Oh my God, Joseph, it just never amazed me, because I feel what you're going through, and I went through a period of time when I felt that way too. Now, I've always been in church. Don't get me wrong, I've always been around church people. My grandmother, my mother, they made sure I stayed in church. But I had some things that made me angry, and I'm like, God, I'm not that bad of a person. Why? And I think a lot of people do feel that way when they go through things. They're like, I'm not bad. You know, I'm not out here robbing people. I'm not out here killing people. I'm not out trying to get over on people. Lord, why does this happen? And why didn't you block and protect me? But sometimes you have to go through something to get closer to God, and also God will use you to be a blessing to someone else. You know, and there's something greater, because you going to jail, it wasn't like you just went and, okay, now I'm out, don't have nothing. It was a purpose behind that. That's when you got your calling. And a lot of times that happen to people, you get your calling in messed up situations.
And that is exactly what happened. I was frustrated. I was 19 years old. I was pulled out of school, you know, and sent to jail. And so when I got down there, I was nervous, because I've heard about jail, but I've never experienced it, you know, as I was about to experience it. And so, unbeknownst to me, I had some cousins that were already on the same unit. Where they had gang affiliation. And so I don't know how those guys, because we all had different last names, I don't know how they figured out that we were
they know related. Everything in the jail system. For some reason, the inmates know more than the people that work there.
Exactly. And so word got out that, you know, my cousins were down there, and they were all in trouble. All of them, they were down there, and they were all in lockup. And so they put me in lockup, you know, I guess trying to see if I was going to be a threat, even though my case is considered low risk. You know, it was a low risk case.
Yeah, but they weren't thinking about that. They were just thinking that, okay, he has family members here. Let's just put him in solitary confinement. So how long were you in lockup?
I was in lockup for a month.
Wow. So explain what lockup is, because I know a little bit about it. Like, I know 20 hours or 18 hours a day. How does that?
I was in lockup for 23 hours and 55 minutes a day. So I was
23 hours and 55 minutes
a day. So I was allowed to come out 5 minutes to take a shower. And literally, it was 5 minutes. So if I had soap on me and the 5 minutes was up, the water automatically shut off, and I had to go back into the cell.
So for 4 weeks, they had you in the cell for 23 hours and 55 minutes.
55 minutes.
What was going through your mind?
Oh man, there were so many things going through my mind. Anger, frustration, disbelief. sadness, loneliness, because you know when you're in lockup, you can't have any visits, you can't make any commissary, so you essentially only have what you come in there with, you know, which is nothing. They strip you of everything, shave your face, your head, put you in a jumpsuit, and give you a sheet, you know, and tell you best of luck.
You know, another thing, Joseph, I hope that there are some young men that are watching this episode and they hear the streets. You know, sometimes even the music we listen to, they make it seem like jail is cool.
Right.
You know, oh, I'm going to jail, you know, I'm just going to be cool or whatever. This is a reality right now. Joseph is saying that he was placed in jail. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't rob anyone. He didn't hold anyone at gunpoint. He had a forgery check, and he was placed in lockup for 23 hours and 55 minutes.
Right.
5 minutes to shower. You know, nothing cool about that at all. Nothing cool about that at all.
Yeah. And I think younger brothers need to understand, going to jail doesn't give you street credibility. You know, you're foolish. If there's a way, you know, that you can avoid it, you should avoid it at all costs. And I wish I had, you know, someone that was standing over me telling me the same thing at the time. And essentially I did through my grandmother.
Right.
But I refused to listen because I wanted to do things my way. I was
Yeah.
mad, I was angry, and I justified what I did, you know, based on the situation that was at hand. So 23 hours, 55 minutes a day, 5 minutes for a shower, no visits, no phone calls. You know, it got to the point where I didn't even know what the time of day was or what day it was, because I had been back there and it's dark back there and I had been back there for so long. But when I got to population, things started to change for me.
Your calling.
Right,
Your
right.
calling.
And so while I was in lockup, it gave me a chance, and I think God put me in isolation for a specific reason.
Right.
And that was so that I could get everything that was going on around me, all the spirits that were talking to me, get them away from me, and essentially where I can focus more so on Him.
Right.
And that's what I did. Toward the end of my stay in lockup, I started to focus my attention on Him, and I started to pray, and I started to reach out to Him and ask Him what is it that He wanted me to do. Because now, for the first time in my life, I have to be still.
Right.
Up until that point, I had never had to be still. So I get out of lockup, and now I'm thrust into a population with 57 other guys in one tank, and I made number 58.
Wow.
And I never forget, I slept in 12 bunk, which was a bunk that's set up on the top, and I ran across many different guys that had done many different crimes. You know, some of them were there rightfully so, some of them were not there rightfully so.
Right.
But I knew that I was there for something I had did, and I had to take responsibility. Now, I did have a way out. I could have chose to give up the guy that was with me, but I chose not to, which made it worse on me, you know, because I wanted to stick to the code of the streets and keep silent, you know. So I'm in there, kind of don't know what to do from there. I have to readjust myself because I'm not used to being around this many guys, different age groups, from different parts of the world. And so everything is open there, from showering to everything. It's wide open in there.
So, okay, at one point, I know me and you talked, and you said that God started offering you commissary, was it, to read and write letters for them?
Right,
you
right.
know?
So what happened is a guy approached me and said, they called me PG because I was from Pleasant Grove. He said, PG, I need you to do something for me. And I said, what's that? He said, I need you to read this letter to me. He said it in the sense that I kind of took offense.
Like read a letter for you.
Yeah, like read a letter for you. Like, what you mean, you know? So in my mind, I'm taking it as if he's trying to challenge me as a man. So I'm up, I'm heated, I'm ready to fight after I did all this praying and like I'm ready to fight. So, but the older gentleman calmed me down. He said, no, man. He said, I can't read what's on this paper. And I'm tripping. I'm sitting there tripping because I'm like, what do you mean? You're 40 years old. What you mean you can't read what's on this paper?
Bless his heart.
But the guy literally couldn't read. And it was from that point, Dietrich, that I knew exactly why I had to come down there. You know, because there was a calling that was way bigger than me. There were so many of them. And once the word got out that I was reading God's letter and I was writing and stuff, and my prices wasn't high to do it, God started looking out for me.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing to hear how, you know, you're here and you're reading and you're writing letters for these guys in prison. Okay, so once you got released, once you did your time, you did like 6 months, right?
Yeah, 7 months. It was a 6 month sentence, but I wound up doing 7 months because they messed up my paperwork.
Okay, so you got out, Okay, and you figure now it's time for a change.
Right.
I'm not going back anymore.
Right.
I'm not doing what I did before.
Exactly.
If I get down to my last penny, it's gonna be me and God to get that next one.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
So you decided to get back enrolled in college.
Yes.
You got your bachelor's degree in education.
Well, at the time, when I re-enrolled in college, I was working on my basics at El Centro. And so my grades went from a 3.7 to a 1.7.
Oh, okay.
So
you
I
had to
re-enrolled,
build it back
right,
up.
because I had to build my GPA up. Because now, mind you, in lockup, I set some goals for myself.
Okay.
I said when I come home, I'm moving out of my grandmother's house. I wanted to enroll in UTA. I wanted to pledge Kappa Alpha Psi, and then I wanted to graduate. So those were the 4 goals that I set for
And
myself.
you did all 4.
I did all 4.
You did
So
all 4.
when I came home, I had to work because I was in debt to financial aid
Right.
because my grades dropped and I didn't complete the semester. So I worked a job. I was building plastic containers for a company. I worked 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and my check was $230 a week.
And you know what? Bam, you just hit another one. You know, sometimes when you're up and you get pulled all the way down,
Right.
you gotta take what you can get at that moment.
Exactly,
Because
exactly.
things will get better. And you know what? I ain't on a $40,000 job straight off. You know, I'm just gonna work my way back up.
Exactly.
Okay, so at that point, you had to build your GPA back up.
Right.
At that point, you transferred to UTA.
Right.
You pledged.
Right.
Okay, got married.
Yes.
Had a beautiful family.
Thank you,
Beautiful
thank you,
family.
thank you.
And now you're faced with another obstacle going into the education system.
Right, because I started out as I'm a lover of science, so I started as a biology major.
Okay.
And the thing that bothered me the most is I was always a brilliant, bright kid going through school, but what I lacked was discipline. I didn't have any study
Wow.
habits. So I was used to going in and reading over a test maybe 20 minutes before the exam.
You know what?
And going
I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
I am guilty of
And
that.
but I didn't retain information.
Yeah.
So going to college and taking classes like cell and molecular biology, it knocked me off my feet because the professor would say, "Hey, read the next 6 chapters. We'll have a test in 2 weeks." You gonna give me 2 weeks to take a test? So I'm trying to see what's going on campus. I'm trying to soak all that in, but my priorities were still kind of out of sync as it related to education. Keep in mind, I would always go back to when I was in jail and think about those guys that were in jail and the difference that I was able to make. So I'm going through school or whatever, my grades are not where they need to be because I didn't have the discipline.
Right.
So I get to what I thought was the end point. I go meet with my advisor, and I said, well, I should be close to graduating. He said, well, now you actually got about another year and a half.
Wow.
And so I had to make a decision because I was already up to debt, up to about 50 grand in debt with student loans. And was I going to stay, and rack up another, 10, 15 grand, or was I going to change that? So I changed my major to communications because I felt like communications is something that's essential in every field, regardless of what field you're in. You need to be able to communicate effectively. So I graduated. I met with him in May, graduated that December.
Wow.
Now, from there, I decided I wanted to go into the teaching realm, and give back in that manner. Being a product of public schools, like I said, graduated from Skyline. I did all my schooling in Dallas.
Right.
Well, now I didn't want to go back to Dallas. I wanted to stay in Arlington because, mind you, I had met my wife and stuff, and we had came together and all that stuff. So it was tough for me to start teaching. They hired me, and then 3 days before school started, they rescinded my contract.
Right.
They rescinded my contract based on my background. Now, mind you, Deetra, I'd already put on my background that I've been in trouble.
Right.
So I was under the impression that they already knew what the situation was. And so, but something, I know it was God that led me to go and talk to my principal. And I went and talked to the principal at the time, and he said, Joe, I'm glad you came and talked to me. He said, because they called me this morning and told me that, you wasn't allowed back on campus until you got your background stuff cleared up. He said, but given the fact that you came and talked to me and was a man about it, I'm gonna do everything I can to help you to, to keep your job. So they rescinded my contract, which is mean they no longer am I an employee,
So at that point, you, because your wife she was pregnant with
with our son,
with your son,
second kid.
with your second child. So at this point, they didn't terminate you, but it's almost like they did.
Well, no, they did terminate.
They did terminate you.
Yeah. So when they rescinded it, that's essentially what they said. My contract, because I was in breach of the contract due to my background, and so I had to meet with all these people and stuff, and finally, I managed to get to the right guy, and I went down. I set up a meeting. I got a chance to talk with him one-on-one, and he said, "Well, Mr. Ray, you don't have a bad background." What I didn't know was, it looks as if I had been in trouble 3 different times on my background because it was 3 checks. Even though the checks have the same dates on them,
Right.
they set it up like I had been arrested
Like
3 different times. So under the school code, it's a thing called moral turpitude. If you've been in trouble 3 times for the same thing, then that automatically bars you from employment.
Wow.
You know, I didn't know this. You know,
Wow.
so again, God was at work because He exposed something to me that would help me later on in life with knowing how my background shows up to people. So I went and talked with the guy, and he said, "Do you have a problem with talking in front of a panel?" And I said, "No." You know, so we set up the date. And there was all these people in there. You know, you had the detective from the district, the lead detective from the district. You had these attorneys, all these big wigs. And mind you, I'm a little fish. You know, at the point, I'm a little fish inside of a big pond. You know,
So you basically had to go in and plead your case
right,
before them,
right.
and they overturned it.
Overturned.
They overturned it.
Right. 'Cause
You-
I went in there, I was honest. I told them what the situation was, and I told them that I wasn't mad at nobody. I accepted my responsibility. But I also told them who better to go in there and reach these kids than somebody that's been where they're projected to go based on their test scores.
Right.
And they told me to go sit out, and I sat out for a minute. I continued to pray. And when I went back in, they gave me a standing ovation.
Gave you a standing ovation.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, gave me a standing. They told me, you know, that I was going to be good for what it is I'm trying to do. And they needed somebody like me to go out and reach these kids, you know, and there you have it. So it took
That's
9 weeks.
awesome.
Yeah, it took 9 weeks. 9
So
weeks.
you went back, and then you got your master's degree.
Right,
You got your
right.
master's degree, and now God is doing something even greater. You have
Right.
your school that's opening up the
Yes.
fall of this year.
Yes,
So we
yes.
want to know a little bit about the school because it's an all-boys school.
Right,
It's all boys,
right.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Right, we're
6th, 7th,
open.
and 8th graders, and you're currently still recruiting.
Right,
You're
still recruiting,
Still recruiting or whatever. So if you could give us a little input on the school, and also so our viewers that are watching, they can bring their sons to enroll in the school.
So the name of the school is In Front of Science
Okay.
Preparatory Academy for Young Men.
Okay.
And it was birthed from the idea of, I come up with this idea that I was going to take 30 at-risk boys. And over the summertime, if there was 6th grade going to the 7th grade and 7th grade going to the 8th grade, I was going to teach them the curriculum ahead of time, as well as partner
Wow.
with 8 universities. So every week the plan was to go to a different university and work on that Friday in the labs what we had been learning all week.
That's great.
I ran into a lot of obstacles with that simply because the funding wasn't there.
Yeah.
So all the grants and stuff that we wrote, none of them came through.
Wow.
So I sat down, I had to revamp, and I had to go back into the drawing board. And I said, well, I have a 501c3. What can I do with it that's going to make a difference? So the difference was, I looked at charter school. There was too much bureaucracy to deal with that, and they were still running on the state curriculum. I didn't like that, so I looked at a private school. And with the private school, there was 15 steps. I had 12 of them already done.
Wow, you're almost
So,
finished.
right, so it's been a 2-year process, but we will be the first all-male academy in the Arlington area.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, all-male private school. We're a private school and we're a STEM academy.
Okay.
So we're running on science, technology, engineering, and math, and we're centered around project-based learning. So my goal is that when I have a 100% graduation rate, and that all my kids will go, you know, in particular, I'm looking at Ivy League schools.
That's
So
great.
that's the goal of our school.
So if you could give us the web address where the viewers that are watching, they can get more information. Also, Joseph has a monthly recruiting session as well.
Right.
If you want to bring your family, you can bring the boys too
Right,
as
right,
well.
exactly.
You know, bring them out to you know, take a look and listen to what he has to say, because what he's doing right now with these boys is really awesome, and I think it'll be very beneficial if you bring your son to his school.
Right,
So
right.
could you give us the web address and
Yeah.
any contact information you have?
So the website is www.infrontofscience.org, and if you log onto our website, click on the events tab, you'll see a listing of the upcoming events we have as far as recruiting sessions. We're currently holding our recruiting sessions at the Central Library in Arlington, and that's located at 101 East Abrams Street. And so we're doing a monthly, in particular at the end of the month. We're trying to shoot for the last Saturday of every month. So again, that's www.infrontofscience.org. is the web address, and then all of my contact information is listed on the website.
Thank you, Joseph, so much. I want to thank Joseph Ray for coming in to tell his story. And like I said, it's in hopes to motivate someone else. You might have a background, you might have been through something, and you feel like, okay, my background has been stamped. I can't work anywhere. You know, I just want to give up hope. But listen to Joseph's story. He's told you he didn't come from the perfect family. You know, he got into some trouble, but now he has his own school that he's opening up, you know, and not only that, he has so much success that's around him right now. It's just phenomenal. So just look at his story and say, you know what, I can. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up, I'm going to pray about it, I'm going to fill out a job application, and somebody's going to hire me. Again, Joseph, I want to thank you for coming to share your story, and it's very inspiring, very motivated. And again, for those of you who are watching, remember, past circumstances do not dictate your future. You do. Thank you, Joseph, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Till next time, take care.